This is CBC Here and Now.
We waited an hour and a half for the ambulance to arrive.
Want it so fast for the ambulance to be there.
A family's grief. They say healthcare services were not available when they needed it the most. Tonight, how the healthcare crisis has affected one family in central Newfoundland. A vital part of the Navy's presence in St. John's is sinking, and it's not a boat. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes. We begin tonight in Harbour Breton. A family in the community there is grieving the loss of their 27-year-old daughter. It's a death they believe could have been prevented. Ashley Malloy died in hospital last month. Her parents say that's when she needed help the most. Emergency services at their hospital were closed, diverted to Grand Falls, Windsor. Here Now's Garrett Berry has the details tonight, but first a warning. This story contains a discussion about suicide.
The hospital is just minutes away. You can even see it from the front steps. But when their daughter was at her lowest, nobody was there.
I called to the hospital and told them she took the pills, and they said the only thing they could do, because there was no doctor, was get us an ambulance.
It took about 90 minutes for that ambulance to come. It was 70 kilometers away.
It seemed like an eternity.
Hopeless. It's like it was never going to show.
I took her in my arms. Same day I'm a little baby. Wanted her to come out of it. Want it so fast for the ambulance to be there.
And all that time, they knew that poison from an overdose of prescription drugs was moving further and further into their daughter's body. Their daughter was dying, and they couldn't do anything but wait.
I was saying, Ashley, you got to throw them up, because you got them two little girls there. You got your fiance, you got all of us here, you know what I mean? She said, no, I'm not throwing them up. So I took my finger. I didn't know if I was doing right or wrong, but I know now I was doing wrong. But at the time, I just thought I was trying to save her, but nobody else would. So I was trying to get her to throw up. And she looked at me and she said, Daisy, just so after you stop, because I said, I'm not throwing them up. So you better let me go. That's the words she told me.
Ashley Malloy suffered from depression for years. Her parents say she tried to get better and build a life. She had 2 kids, she got engaged, and had beautiful, bright moments.
She's all there if you wanted something done. She was a joy to be around.
But ultimately, she couldn't find the help she needed. By March, she had hit a low.
She couldn't do nothing alone. She got to the inn and she wouldn't go places. She just gave up on everything because she felt useless.
And in her final hours, when she needed help the most, there was no doctor and no ambulance in the community to respond. Ashley got to hospital in Grand Falls, Windsor about 5 hours after that frantic phone call. She died that night after suffering seizures in the intensive care unit.
So the doctor came in and said, go in with her and hold her hand. Hey, do you let your baby go? We had to go in and sit by her bedside, hold her in. The last few seconds she was hanging in there, I took her in my arms. Hold her. I hold her in my arms. She looked up at me with a big smile on her face. Her eyes open as wide as they could. Big smile. She just passed on.
She was buried 3 days later. Her 2 children, 7 and 5, picked out the colors for the fabric flowers that mark her grave.
You shouldn't have outlived your kids. Ours was way too soon. Way too soon. all because of neglect and the help that she wanted, but she could not get. She begged for the help, and she could not get it.
Ashley's 2 daughters now live with their grandparents. William and Penny get them ready for school each day and try to explain something that just can't be understood.
After Ashley passed, we took her jacket and her shoes was left here. So me being me, comes back, puts her shoes on the shoe rack, put her jacket on the back of the chair in the dinette. So just after that, the girls come down, and the oldest one, Sophia, said, "Pop, she said, you tricked me." I said, "Why, baby?" She said, "Mommy's here." I said, "No, baby." I said, "Mommy's not here."
Garrett Berry, CBC News, Harbour Breton.
In other news tonight, the RCMP is reporting an ATV fatality on the long weekend. A 33-year-old crashed his machine on a woods road near Petley on Random Island Sunday afternoon. He was found near the machine, which was badly damaged, and taken to hospital in Clarenville, where he later died. The Clarenville RCMP says he was not wearing a helmet. The Office of the Chief Medical Examiner is involved, and they're investigating the cause of that crash. The RCMP says 7 people have died during off-road vehicle incidents in its jurisdiction this year. Well, the RNC responded to a serious car accident on the Southern Shore Highway earlier today. Police received the call around 10:30 this morning and closed the road for several hours, asking drivers to avoid the area. No other information is known at this time.
Well, for the first time in 2 years, a cruise ship is docked in Corner Brook. Crowds and a welcome dog gathered to greet the Seven Seas Navigator. The ship holds nearly 500 passengers and more than 300 crew. It arrived in Corner Brook this morning and was scheduled to leave about 30 minutes ago. And from there, the Seven Seas is headed to Quebec. This cruise season, Corner Brook is expected to see as many as 24 ships in its port, including 6 ships visiting for the first time. As you can see there, a lovely day to visit, although a little bit cold in some areas. May long weekend snow up in Labrador. Wouldn't be May 24th if we didn't, or May 24th rather, if we didn't have some snow in some areas. So Sheldon shared this photo of the cabin yesterday morning, but temperatures were much colder today across some areas. In fact, 13 degrees colder right now in St. John's than it was yesterday. Quite the opposite though, up across Labrador, 6 degrees warmer and 7 degrees warmer in Happy Valley Goose Bay. So certainly some nicer air, temperatures in the teens as well. Across the west coast, we're looking at about 11 degrees right now in Corner Brook, 14 in Badger, and we do have those temperatures cool along coastal areas of the province. I'll get into why and how long this warm air in some areas and cool air is going to stick around.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the Fisheries Minister has approved a fish processing license for an idle plant in St. Mary's Bay. Derek Bragg announced the decision in a news release this morning. Now, Bragg says the license restricts the plant to processing 2.5 million pounds of snow crab. The company's application to process crab has sparked controversy. People in the community protested earlier this month in an attempt to get a license for the plant, while plant workers elsewhere in the province protested, urging the minister to reject the license, arguing it would mean less work for them. Bragg says the Fish Processing Board recommended the approval, and the minister says he believes his decision is fair. The Royal Canadian Navy has a costly sinking on its hands in St. John's, and it's not a boat. The Navy's reserve base has been dealing with a few pesky sinkholes, and it's come to a costly conclusion. Ryan Cook reports.
Navy vessels are always a spectacle in St. John's, but when they dock here on Harbour Drive, it's not just because it's a great spot for show and tell. It's because they can't dock across the water, where they should be at HMCS Cabot. No visiting ships have docked here in several years, and that's because the man-made jetty beneath our feet is eroding. Sediment is spilling out into the harbour, and it's causing parts of the waterfront to fall into sinkholes. It's been a major headache for several years, but a decision has been made to demolish much of this cordoned-off area.
And I'm on my way to see their brand new headquarters in St. John's.
HMCS Cabot opened to great fanfare in 2000. The Navy had wanted a site near the water for decades, and they paid to make it happen. It cost about $16 million to build here, on top of a jetty that was constructed in 1978. A D&D spokesperson tells me the steel underwater structures are corroding and, quote, this has rendered much of the jetty unsafe and is blocked off from use, with safety being of the utmost priority. We're told the building itself is fine. It's still being used by cadet groups 2 nights a week without any issues. The problems lie with the infrastructure in front of the building. D&D and the Coast Guard are splitting the work up into 2 projects. First, they're issuing a tender later this year for demolition. That work should begin next year. Then they're going to take a long, hard look at whether to rebuild a jetty on this site or cut their losses and leave it be. Ryan Cook, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, if you have Jif peanut butter in your cupboard, you'll want to check it to ensure it's not part of a recall. The company, in cooperation with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, has issued a voluntary recall for 11 products due to potential salmonella contamination. We're sharing the codes there with you on the screen. You can also check our website for that information. The Canadian recall follows a U.S. outbreak of salmonella affecting 14 people in 12 states. That's been linked to the Jif peanut butter. Consumers looking to report symptoms or who have questions are encouraged to contact Jif directly. A Labrador man who lost his sight is giving back to the CNIB. Rodney Barney lost his vision in his 20s, but still works as a fisherman. And when he's not on the water, he's making patio furniture. The Lansalou man was in St. John's this week to make a donation in support of a fundraiser called Wheels for Wishes. The initiative aims to raise $50,000 to buy a buddy for a young man in Corner Brook, a young man Barney already feels a connection with.
I could probably see about somewhere between 5 and 10% of what you could see.
What maps is that?
Probably in my early 20s, and like when I found out what it was, it's gradually gotten worse over the last 30 years. Like I always liked outdoors. I loved to cut wood, bird hunt, trout fish, and I had to give up all that. It was give up my driver's license. Thankfully, I still could do stuff out the shed. I could still fish, and gives you some kind of normal life. We had a son, and we had a glider for him up in his room to rock him to sleep. And after he grew up and grew out of the rocking stage, I just had the glider there one day, so I could probably make that. And started that I made one, and then somebody showed up, oh, I'll buy that. And then it was just a hobby for me in the winter months.
Wanted to ask them first in case, something happened where he couldn't make a chair, but I'd like to see if they wanted to, and if they couldn't donate it, I would buy it myself and get it, because just in case. So I asked Elizabeth if it would be okay if he wanted to, and they said sure. So then I messaged Leon and some other of his co-volunteer people, and they said that'd be awesome.
Some years ago, a group of us got together to do charity work. We wanted to help children in Newfoundland and Labrador, and through some conversations, we ended up finding that the CNIB were providing buddy dogs to children who had sight loss. There wasn't a lot of talk about people helping that organization, so we just felt it was a really good fit for us. We figured we'd call on the car people and empower them to do some fundraising. We'd build a car show event, we'd do a cruise, and we'd reach out to the people who support the automotive industry, dealers and different companies through town, and they support us. And in return, we raised $50,000 to purchase a buddy dog and this year it'll be for Nathan, a 7-year-old little boy who lives on the west coast of Newfoundland. Through the jigs and the reels, we start talking back and forth, start talking to Mackenzie, and then this past weekend I got to meet Rodney, and it's funny, because it's almost like we've known each other for a long time. The relationship is so smooth and so easy. I've worked in the community he's from, and it's pretty amazing. Like our game plan is to help children in Newfoundland and Labrador, not children on the Avalon Peninsula. So when we get people that reach out from all across Newfoundland and Labrador that want to help us, it tells us we're getting the right messaging out there. We're doing the right things for people.
When I came here in St. John's, Leanne told me that the guy that raised money for this year is legally blind with RP, and that's what I have. So that makes you feel a little good that it's going to somewhere, going to somebody that got the same disease I've got, right? And like I never noticed my problem I got until my early 20s. So, and he's just a kid. So it's nice to know that's going somewhere where it's going to be well used.
Well, it's not just tourists showing up for Come Home Year. The icebergs are back as well. This one is in Spillers Cove on the Bonavista Peninsula. Looks like those folks in the boat are getting a great view of that berg. Don't want to get too close, though. Just beautiful.
Well, the Atlantic hurricane season is just around the corner. We're in a La Nina year, similar to what it was last year. I'll tell you what all that means and have the full forecast coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Absolute final deadline is midnight, Friday, June 3rd. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
Well, hard to believe, but hurricane season is around the corner, right?
June 1st.
1st is when it starts. Do we have any sense of like what's in store this season?
Yeah, the hurricane forecast, in fact, was just released today, which typically, a week or two before June 1st start to get some indications of what the atmosphere is looking like. So let's take a look at what the forecast is. So last year, just to put it into perspective, we had 21 named storms. And in fact, Larry, if you remember that one, the Category 1 storm was actually the first storm to make landfall in many years. We had 7 hurricanes and 4 of them were major. So this year, we're expecting another above normal hurricane season. Typically, we see about 14 named storms, 7 become hurricanes, and 3 are strong Category 3 or higher. But the outlook for this year is we're looking at about 14 to 21 named storms, 6 to 10 of those becoming hurricanes, and 3 to 6 being Category 3 or higher. So that's about a 65% chance of that happening. And the reason for that is, again, some indications from the atmosphere. So we're in another La Nina pattern, and what that means is we see above normal tropical temperatures, Atlantic temperatures, so all those bright colors there, the oranges and the yellows are above normal temperatures, and then we have less wind shear. So what happens is hurricanes are vertical storms. When we have more wind shear, it tears the storm apart. When you have less, it allows the storms to stay together for longer and feed off of those warm waters. So it does look like that is, again, what's going to happen again this year. And if we do have, well, say for the last 6 years, we've actually had a hurricane develop before June 1st. If that happens again, it'll be 7 years and the name will be Alex. But overall, these are the names that we'll be looking at for this year. So certainly, definitely a thing to look forward, or look ahead to, I should say, over the next couple of months. Typically, we start to see the most action between August and September and the beginning of October. So right now, not a whole lot of weather to talk about. We're sitting under a beautiful ridge of high pressure, lots of sunshine out there. We did have some cloud cover a little bit earlier today, but that's moved off. But the other thing you notice is those drop in temperatures right across the board along the coast. Otherwise, still looking at some pretty nice temperatures for the further west and further towards central you go. 14 degrees in Badger, 12 in Stephenville. Temperatures up across Labrador topped out at 16 degrees in Lab City today. You head towards the coast, so 5 degrees in Makovic. So as we head through the night tonight, thanks to that ridge of high pressure, there really isn't a whole lot to talk about. We may see a few showers in Lab West through the evening hours. Same thing for the tip of the northern peninsula. You may see a few showers. Otherwise, a quiet, cold night tonight, and that means that if you got a jump on some of your planting this weekend, considering the weather was so nice, there is a chance we could see some frost through the overnight, and that's again thanks to the temperatures dropping near or below zero, particularly in those low-lying areas. So if you do have some frost-sensitive plants, you're definitely going to want to do to cover those up. The winds will be out of the northeast about 20 kilometers per hour. Temperatures across the Big Land should stay above zero or just near between 1 and 4 degrees, again with those showers possible for Lab West. Now as we head through the day tomorrow, not a whole lot happening either. However, we will see a line of showers move across the Big Land as we get into the afternoon hours. And then as we head through the evening, we'll start to see those clouds on the increase for the northern peninsula, and then that line of showers will move through. Looks like they should break up into the overnight before they get to the Avalon. We may see a few showers in the early morning hours, but overall it will be a fairly quiet day today, tomorrow, with those temperatures staying a little bit below where we should be sitting this time of year. So back into the single digits, about 8 degrees for the majority of the Avalon, either periods of cloud cover or and some sunny breaks. A little bit further west you head, a little bit nicer weather as well, looking at about 15 degrees. Same thing through central, temperatures even a bit warmer than that, 17 to 18 degrees. Harbor Breton, you're going to be around 9 degrees through the day. You're in a bit of onshore flow. And then those temperatures as you head towards the west coast, looking at the double digits again, 16 to 18 degrees. And then even for southeastern Labrador, you're looking at a pretty nice day, 16 degrees in Mary's Harbor with those showers rolling through the day. In behind that, you are going to see some cooler air. 8 degrees will be the afternoon high in Lab City. So that's a look at tomorrow's forecast. We'll look ahead to the rest of the week when I come back.
Well, it's getting easier to enter Canada by water after years of pandemic restrictions. The Canada Border Service Agency has reopened more than 300 small harbors to international boats. The move is expected to have a big effect on recreational boaters and tourism. And as Shayna Luck reports, for a port in Lunenburg, it's come just in time.
Lunenburg is getting ready for the big influx of tourists. The historic port closed to international boaters when the pandemic hit. Now they're finally coming back.
Lunenburg is a tough place to drive to. We're right out on the end of the road, but if you're on a boat, it's on the way to everywhere.
Paul Baskett employs 7 people at his boatworks shop and typically does more than $1 million of business every year.
We have boats from Europe, boats from the United States. A lot of people cruise to Greenland and Newfoundland, and they come up from the Caribbean.
That all stopped in 2020 when the Canada Border Services Agency suspended service in the town.
You know, we were almost mothballed for a while because of it, but so was everybody else.
Before the pandemic, boaters entering Canada could do their paperwork here, but with small ports along the south shore of Nova Scotia closed, they had to travel to larger ports like Halifax, sometimes adding a day's worth of travel for small boats. About 20% of the business in this sail repair shop comes from the Northeast United States.
May is the month when people move their boats.
And the reopening of small ports could attract tourists in other parts of the country. McMillan is ready for them to arrive.
All the Great Lakes, you know, there's little places where Americans transit and go to and from Canada because same reason, looking for cruising, looking for, you know, a little more pristine, get away from the big cities.
A few hours' drive from Lunenburg, some Americans are already arriving. This is the first ferry from Maine in 3 years. Tourism operators are hoping those visitors will spread throughout the province and spend some money while they're here. Lunenburg is just one of more than 300 border services sites reopening across the country. About 50 are in Atlantic Canada and the West. Most of the rest are in Ontario. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Lunenburg.
Well, tomorrow on CBC Radio's St. John's Morning Show, you'll hear about how a team of researchers are coming here this summer in search of great white sharks. That's tomorrow with host Chrissy Holmes. And on Crosstalk tomorrow, guest host Bernice Hillier is asking how you would change public transit in this province. The conversation starts at noon, 11:30 in most of Labrador.
You can't possibly give every child the attention they need, but you're going to try. Put on your everything's great face and go change some lives.
The needs are greater, the expectations are greater.
Crisis in the classroom. The NLTA says teachers shouldn't have to give themselves a pep talk. Why a new ad campaign is pushing smaller class sizes. That's just ahead. new ad campaign is trying to draw attention to class sizes in the province's schools.
Looking good, Miss Connors. Power stance on point. 30 students. You've eaten more waffles for breakfast. You can't possibly give every child the attention they need, but you're going to try. And after school, you're going to coach volleyball and prep for tomorrow's lessons. So come on, Connors. Put on your everything's great face and go change some lives.
The campaign is from the Newfoundland and Labrador Teachers Association, which is arguing that it's getting more challenging to give students the attention they need. The president of the union spoke with Anthony Germain today from CBC Radio's On the Go.
Well, Trent Landing, Ms. Connors, having a rough day, putting on a brave face. She's got 30 students. She has to coach volleyball after school and lesson plan. What's the message you're trying to send?
Yeah, totally so. So this is real to us. This is the real experience of teachers in the classroom these days, and it's nothing new really. It's been like that in the last 10 years. Is that the expectations of teachers in the school system right now just keeps being layered on and on and on. Class size is one piece of it. We have newcomers coming that we want to make sure we're supporting them as best we can. There's the added pressures of a substitute teacher shortage. When there's shortages in the schools, that just adds to greater pressure on the classroom teacher. So these ads are bang on and they're real.
So let's break it down a bit, because you just said in your answer that this is nothing new. If it's nothing new, why make these ads?
Well, it's kind of the hidden reality, I guess, a hidden crisis that's currently in our system. If you've got these many children in your class, say 30 plus, for example, teaching in 2022 is certainly not teaching in 1992. It's a different experience. The needs are greater, the expectations are greater, the curriculum needs are greater. The human resources are not where they need to be. And so these ads really serve a purpose for us to really get the word out that this is reality in our classrooms, and teachers are feeling it, and by virtue of that, the students are feeling it.
So, the evidence suggests, that larger classrooms obviously makes it more difficult for a teacher to give specific attention to each individual student.
Yes.
What is the impact of classes that are really over the edge of the cap or too large?
Well, just having those extra 2 or 3 bodies in there, the class size are too large, period. But then when you have a class cap that's really not being respected, and you add 1 or 2 people in, once you add in all of the additional learning difficulties that might be in there, behavioral concerns, English as a second language, might be added in there, and just the overall expectation of running a school from day to day with those numbers in there, it just raises the bar in terms of what's expected of a teacher, and then the stressors filter their way down to the individual students who are looking for individual support.
Right. Now, when I was, late in life learning more about education, you taught a bit about, teaching persona. And actually putting on that face, what is your persona in the classroom? The message, Ms. Connors should not have to put on a brave face. Well, what's the thinking behind that?
Well, the thing is, ultimately, when you walk into the classroom, the support should be there for you, meaning there should be lesser bodies in there for you to be responsible for. The expectation should be clear as to what needs to occur. You get to the curriculum, but right now there's so many layers again around the needs in that room, the mental health concerns, the behaviors, the add-ons, I guess, of programs that aren't core per se, but are expectations within, and just let alone the pandemic, I guess, of what was expected during those times. But if you have all of those situations and all of a sudden then there's 2 or 3 teachers out that can't be filled, then you have classes doubling up, you have classes where coverage is needed by additional teachers, and we also have situations in this province where emergency supply teachers are coming in, which ultimately they're untrained teachers.
Yeah, and I'm told also that the pandemic exposed a shortage of substitute or supply teachers, and that in some instances schools elected to combine classes because they couldn't find subs.
Right.
So what happens when that happens?
Well, literally that. They combine classes, teachers are losing their prep times. It's a circumstance where, grade 3 and 4, for example, the grade 4 teacher may be out, so let's put the grade 4s in with the grade 3s. And you know full well then that all of a sudden the stress on that teacher is amped up, and plus the amount of work that can get done by those students during those times is much less. So it's a combo piece. We're very concerned about the system and the students.
I want to go to the other ad, because there's the ad that we had on with Ms. Connors, but there's also another ad with one of Ms. Connors' students. So let's give that a look.
Kid, you got it made. You love your friends, you love your teacher, you love math, and you'd be a total human calculator if you had more time with Miss Connors. There's so many kids in your class, it's hard to get her attention. Okay, focus on the positives. Your birthday's only 42 days away, and you've got a face that says everything's fine.
We must invest in smaller classes. Nobody should have to wear a brave face to school.
All right, so this young boy, let's call him Jimmy because I don't think he's actually named.
Sure.
We're seeing it from the student's point of view. Why did you want to put that out there?
Well, and it's the eyes of the children are seeing it, aren't they? And so parents may not be seeing, but the children are. So if you just say, for example, you have a child in there with a learning disorder, and they need that added attention, that one-on-one, they may not be getting that additional support that they need, not because the teacher doesn't have an interest, but they just can't get to the child as much as they need to, or the typical learner, I should say, who just might have that question and need that answer for that question, or the child who is really feeling overwhelmed from a mental health perspective and needs that warm hand that comes down and just says you're doing okay. That's the kind of thing, because this is about relationships. Teaching is totally relationships, and if there's too many people in those classes and teachers don't have the time to do it, it gets overwhelming for everyone.
All right, it's always interesting to talk to you, Trent Lanian. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Anthony.
Well, if you're looking for a unique gardening project this summer, you could try crevice gardening.
These little tiny alpines, they're really the cutest little things you could possibly ever grow. For the right type of personality, it just grabs you.
Coming up, we'll speak with an expert on how you can turn all of these nooks and crannies into a stunning garden. Well, at least 15 people are dead after a shooting at a Texas elementary school. The governor of Texas says 14 students and a teacher were killed in the shooting in Uvalde, about 135 kilometers west of San Antonio. The suspect, an 18-year-old man who lived in Uvalde, is also dead. It happened over the lunch hour. Well, Canadians can expect fewer travel restrictions this summer, but for many, any sense of travel relief is meeting some turbulence as gas prices continue to climb. Sophia Harris looks at how that's forcing many people to once again pause their plans.
After 2 years of lockdowns and travel restrictions, Chanakya Ramdev finally started making plans this spring to visit his parents.
My parents, who are seniors now, have been alone in India.
But Ramdev says his trip is on hold again because airfares to India recently spiked to around $3,000 round trip, a price he can't afford.
$3,000 for me is equal to 5 months of rent. Even though the travel restrictions have been removed, a new restriction has been added, which is a financial restriction.
According to Statistics Canada, airfares are surging, up by 20% in April compared to pre-pandemic prices. This economist blames the hike on increased demand at a time when airlines aren't yet flying at full capacity and soaring oil prices.
Jet fuel prices have risen over 120% compared to this time in 2019.
High prices at the pumps are also putting a damper on travel plans closer to home. The national average price of gas recently topped $2 a liter, a record high. Pre-pandemic, Ted Hilton regularly made the 460-kilometer drive to Michigan to visit family. He wants to resume those trips, but the senior, who lives on a fixed income, says he can't afford the gas bill.
You depend on keeping in touch with friends and relatives, and not everybody lives next door. And not being able to travel and to meet up with them, it does make you feel rather isolated.
Experts predict fuel prices will remain high for some time and could climb even higher, meaning no relief in sight for cash-strapped Canadians with unfulfilled travel plans. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
Newfoundland is known as the Rock for a reason. We have an especially rocky terrain in this province, and that can cause some challenges for gardeners. But there are ways to use those rocks to your advantage to create stunning and unique landscapes using just some nooks and crannies. And Paul Spriggs is doing just that here at the Botanical Garden in St. John's using a technique called crevice gardening. So first of all, what is crevice gardening?
Crevice gardening is a subset of rock gardening. So rock gardening is its own little sliver of horticulture where we attempt to grow difficult plants that tend to come from more exposed places like the mountaintops, sea coasts, deserts, really dry places. So these plants require different conditions than you would need in the garden. And the crevice garden is just the latest and the greatest style of growing these alpine plants or these rock plants. There's no rock gardener in the world that doesn't know about crevice gardens, but they're still new enough that a lot of people are still just finding out about them now. So it's really a style of garden for plant specialists. A lot of people don't really start with rock gardening. They start with their vegetable gardening or native plants or something, and then they kind of want more of a challenge maybe. And for the right type of person, these little tiny alpines, they're really the cutest little things you could possibly ever grow. And for the right type of personality, it just grabs you, and it makes it so that's all you ever want to grow, right?
And what do you mean when you say the cutest little things?
Well, I mean, typically we're growing these mountain plants, and so because they're from extreme environments, they don't get tall. They have to stay out of the wind and the snow and all these things. They have to, when they bloom, they have a very short growing season, and they tend to be more vibrant and more colorful because they have such a short period to attract their pollinators and go to seed. And they may only be exposed from the snow for a couple of months out of the year. So because of their diminutive size, they just tend to be a little extra cute. And it's hard to put it into words, but rock gardeners refer to a choice plant. And not every plant falls into that category, but the choicest plants are the cutest, but also the ones that are more difficult and tend to grow very slowly, right? You know, it's a real waiting game in rock gardening. It's not like you buy your red geranium and put it in the windowsill. This is, you know, 1 year later you got to plant this big, 2 years later you got to plant this big, 3 years later it's finally turning into something that's worth looking at, right?
It's an investment.
It's an investment in time, right? But kind of like, you know, fine whiskey, you know, the more aged it is, the more integrity it has, right?
What are the best plants to use in a crevice garden?
So what we're looking for are plants that are going to stay small and neat and tidy. This little plant here is called an Androsaceae. I grew this from seed last year. You can see now it's already starting to flower for the season. But it's very, very small, tight little plant. This little miniature columbine, you can sort of envision that, you know, a whole cluster of these with their little flowers nodding in the breeze, you know, on the top of that little mountain peak that we created will be absolutely adorable.
Dash of color.
A dash of color. And then some plants that a lot of people will get easy access to will be things like the hens and chicks and different types of sedums. We're really growing them more for their form, the color of the foliage. They do have a flower, but the flower is sort of secondary for the most part. This look you're going to see year round.
Tim, tell us how this crevice garden came about.
Well, it was, we've always been thinking about it, but it actually came about because of a wonderful donation by a very supportive friend of the garden, and that donation made it possible to bring Paul here. So we were very, very happy for that donation and very thankful for that donor. When you go to different botanical gardens around the world, you get a chance to see what great plants grow in that area. And so this was another opportunity again to show this group of plants, to show this particular style. So people are now going to get to come and see not only the garden style that we've been doing for years, but now these fantastic brand new style of alpine gardening or rock gardening called crevice gardening.
I think you could show us like how to put together
absolutely.
one of the like sections of it.
For sure. So here we have a nice slabby rock, and of course the best rocks for crevice gardens are ones with two parallel sides, because when you put one right next to the other you got an instant crevice, right? Again, we're not trying to create like a loaf of bread look here. We're trying to create an undulating mound that's very natural, right? So we've already defined that mound with the sand piles underneath it. So now we're just putting rocks on top. So you take your slab and you quite literally put it next to next to your previous course. So if this was a brick wall, this would be called a rock wall. This would be called a course, right? So each course is set into the sand with you know, roughly 1 to 2 inches of space in between. This gets put on top like that, and then we'll shovel sand into here to the point that it tops right up, pack it all down to the point where the sand is completely flush with here. And I mean, short answer, that's basically what we do. A big question people ask is, how do you keep all that sand from, when the rain comes, just sloughing out of the crevice, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is what these guys have been doing. We then put little rocks in between. We hammer them in with a hammer, and that locks everything. Like, see how absolutely, like, that is not moving. It's not even a big rock, but it's not moving at all. And so this is the finishing aspect. And then once we've done all that, then it's time for planting. Planting it in such a way that when it's in full bloom, it hits you emotionally, right? So you see these, when you approach it, it makes your heart flutter and just go, oh, what am I looking at, kind of thing, which all gardens should do, I think.
I agree.
You know?
This is fantastic. Thank you so much, Paul. Really appreciate this.
My absolute pleasure.
Well, a huge feat for a teenager from North Vancouver. She'll soon be lacing up to play defense for the Vancouver Giants.
Yes, which means 15-year-old Chloe Pomerano has just made history. Leanne Young brings us that trailblazing story.
Chloe Pomerano isn't afraid of hard work.
I usually shoot like about 200 pucks, and then I do some stick handling like 20-30 minutes.
And the 15-year-old's hard work is paying off. She's made hockey history.
I got drafted to the WHL.
The Vancouver Giants picked her in the 13th round, making her the first female skater ever drafted into the Canadian Hockey League.
My mom was driving me home from school, and I just saw on my phone, and I was just shocked, and I was like amazed.
She and her family had heard rumors she might be drafted.
It's hard to believe that someone's going to pull the trigger on something like that. Even though, in our opinion, she deserved it. And obviously, we believe that if she was a boy, that she would have been picked long before then.
Pomerano started hockey at the age of 3. She grew to love the competitive nature of the game. Those who have coached her say she was destined for it.
She's one of those that wants to be, the first one on the ice and the last one off. But that being said, she makes everybody around her better.
Only female goalies have preceded Pomerano in the CHL.
You received the news from the Giants. You have been drafted by the Western Hockey League.
She's now generating buzz across the hockey world.
For her to be able to get drafted is huge for women's hockey, and I'm super pumped for her and to see what kind of things that she does in the future.
As a 13th round draft pick, Pomerano says she knows it's unlikely she'll end up playing for the Giants, but teammates have been welcoming. So has the team's part owner, singer Michael Bublé.
He just called me to congratulate me, and it's really, really crazy.
This historic moment isn't lost on the teen.
It means everything, like just to be an inspiration to young girls as well, like show them that they can do anything if they work hard for it. That was gold.
Her ultimate goal, an Olympic gold medal for Team Canada. Leanne Young, CBC News, North Vancouver.
Well, take a look at this dramatic rescue off the coast of Spain. That's a 12-meter-long whale who was so tightly wrapped in a illegal net it couldn't open its mouth.
Oh, it's hard to watch. They tried freeing the whale from the surface, but had to resort to divers. It took the team about 45 minutes before the whale was finally free. One diver said it seemed like the whale understood that they were there to help, and once she was released, the whale stayed with the team for several minutes before swimming away. So glad there's a happy ending to that story.
It's true, though. They often, lots of people have said that the whales often stay around and almost say thank you, and then
seem to know that you're there to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, time to look ahead to the long-range forecast. How are things looking for the rest of the week?
Well, we're unfortunately going to stay with these cool temperatures for areas along the northeast coast. So single-digit highs. We're going to say goodbye to what happened on the weekend. We'll just pretend like that didn't happen. Yeah.
It's like a dramatic difference.
It's a dramatic difference. It's true. But yeah, so we do have a bit of unsettled weather that's going to move through overnight through the day tomorrow for Labrador, and then overnight for the west coast and through central. There's those showers there. It likely will escape those showers for the Avalon, but overall it will lead to a pretty nice Thursday into the afternoon with not a whole lot going on. Temperatures, though, like I said, are going to stay cool all along the coast as we have that onshore wind, about 9 degrees in St. John's, 9 in Gander as well, 12 in Grand Falls, Windsor. Those temperatures a bit warmer, further away from that onshore flow, so about 13 to 15 degrees along the south coast. Temperatures up across Labrador will be mild as well, so 10 degrees in Lab City. And then we've got single-digit highs along coastal areas of Labrador. So Cartwright, you'll be hovering around 5 degrees. But it should be a fairly nice day for you as far as that sunshine goes. Now, as we head through Thursday evening, we may see a few showers, but the next system is going to move in through Friday. Looks like it should stay south of the Big Land, at least through the first half of the day on Friday. And we will see those showers move in through the afternoon across the island. And then eventually the northern peninsula, you will more than likely stay out of this. So temperatures should stay about 8 degrees for you in St. Anthony. Otherwise, we're going to stay again between 8 to 10 degrees. So this is below where we should be sitting this time of year up across Labrador. We're looking at Happy Valley, Goose Bay, 12 degrees. That should be the warm spot. Otherwise, a few flurries possible in Nain for the morning hours. Your temperatures will only hover around 4 degrees. Now, we will return to the double digits, 10 to 12 degrees by the weekend. We may see temperatures a bit warmer than this, but at this point, that's what it's looking like, and the chance of showers. Likely rain Friday, Saturday showers, Sunday, maybe a few peaks of sun in the mix, but overall it will be unsettled at least through the first half of the day. Now for central Newfoundland, you're looking at unsettled end to the week as well, and beginning of the weekend with the temperatures around 12 to 13 degrees. Now overnight lows on Saturday night, really not going to move too much. That's the case through western Newfoundland as well. You're looking at your temperature hovering around 15 degrees right through the weekend with rain, the story. Potentially 20 to as much as 30 millimeters in total through those couple of days. Now for eastern Labrador, you're going to stay between 10 to 12 degrees. Sunshine right through Saturday. Sunday is when things will get a bit unsettled for you. So you're going to return to cloudy skies and temperature around 9 degrees. And then for western Labrador, your showers will return for Saturday and Sunday, but climbing up to about 13 degrees on Sunday. Take a look at this shot. This was this morning, in fact, in Halls Bay. Thank you to Amanda for that from Springdale. Great shot there. Nice to see the calm, no wind, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you have any weather photos that you would like to share with us, send them to nophotos@cbc.ca.
Nice to be out there in a kayak or something.
I know, I was wanting to get my canoe out this weekend. It didn't happen.
Nice. Well, Ash, I suppose it's certainly not time to pack away our warm coats and our boots and maybe even our gloves based on that forecast. What a shock to the system after the weather on the long weekend.
Yeah, and especially, like, I know I just wanted to go to the nursery and I wanted to buy a bunch of flowers and I wanted to plant everything.
Them. It's like, no, not until the end of June.
That was just yeah, not until the end of June. But that's okay.
It's hard to resist.
It is, especially when it's so nice. But, you know, got the deck stained, so that's all that matters.
We can get them and, like, keep them indoors.
Yeah,
until
just bring
then.
them in.
Yeah,
or the greenhouse.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll make it work.
Okay. Excellent. All right, thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.